I'm Rick Lewis with the Non-Hoop Report. On today's segment of Coach's Corner, I have Coach Hank Newsom of Mountain Heritage. Welcome, Coach.
I appreciate you having me.
Well, thank you for being on today. I really appreciate it. Coach, you were born in Erie, Pennsylvania, and you attended West Virginia University, and you became a grad assistant on the girls' basketball team there. Explain that.
It's an interesting story. I became friends with some of the football players when I was in undergrad, and we used to go to Stansbury Hall, and we'd hoop about every day at 4 o'clock. We were done with class, and they were done with whatever they had to do. And Coach Basil sent one of her assistants to the rec to get some players to play against her girls. And he happened to know some of the football guys. We were playing with them. We were close. So ended up going and playing against the girls. And one thing led to another. And I was attending every practice in about a month. So it was kind of an interesting way to get into it. It was certainly a great opportunity, and I learned a lot.
Did you know before that you're going to get into coaching before being a grad assistant for the women's team?
I did not. Actually, my undergrad was in social work, and I really hadn't planned on doing that. As soon as I got in, though, I kind of knew that's where I wanted to go. I didn't know on what level, whether college level, high school, whatever. I really didn't have any picture beyond where I was. So as soon as I graduated undergrad, I went right to graduate school and got a master's in history and wanted to become a teacher and coach.
Getting into high school coaching is very difficult. I don't think people really understand what you guys go through as far as get to where you are at the current level. But your first 8 years as a coach, you were an assistant coach at West Caldwell. Talk about that transition, and did you ever think in the back of your mind that you were ever going to get the opportunity to be a head coach?
Well, in graduate school, when I student taught at a middle school, I actually was with the assistant coach at Morgantown High School. And that's kind of where I got started. I was substitute teaching, going to graduate school, and coaching basketball with them. I always wanted to move to the Charlotte area. I don't know why. Even when I was a kid, I did. And so there was an opportunity in Lenoir, which was somewhat close, and I figured I'd go down and check it out. Got very, very lucky and happened to, join a school with Danny Anderson as the head coach, who has, I think it's 800 wins now. And he was kind enough to take me on as assistant coach. There was about 6 of us, and usually 25, 30 to 25 years old. And every one of them became a head coach. And so I kind of figured I was in that line. I've learned so much from him every day. So as soon as I got into it with him, he was kind enough to give us ownership of the program, teach us how to do simple things like order, eligibility, those things. So it was kind of in the cards, and I knew that was something I wanted to do.
Well, you mentioned you want to get into the Charlotte area. There's a running joke. I live in Statesville, which is right where we have Interstate 77. And the running joke is, the people in West Virginia and Ohio, you would think when you're in Statesville in the summertime, you think you're living in West Virginia, Ohio, all the license tag, but it's a midway point because everybody from West Virginia and also Ohio and the Pennsylvania area was going to Myrtle Beach for vacation.
Yeah, we didn't go to the beach a lot in Erie, PA. We went to the lake. It was pretty cold. In my mind, I envisioned North Carolina beaches and, down south. Of course, I end up in the mountains and with just as much snow as I left in Erie. But, it was somewhere I wanted to go. I knew it was a basketball mecca. I grew up in the Big East in Erie, but knew of Duke and Carolina, of course. And my dad, he was a high school coach for a long time, and he had a manager that went to UNC. So I always knew about Carolina, and of course, Jordan, blah, blah, blah. But we wanted to come down south, at least I did, and they certainly supported me. And now my entire family lives in the South. My parents live in Lenoir. They actually moved down. My other sister lives in Raleigh, and my sister Lynn lives in Murfreesboro now. Her husband's assistant coach at Middle Tennessee State. So it's in the family.
Well, in 2011, you finally got your opportunity to be a head coach, and you spent 1 year at West Caldwell. You had a really good season, but you had a very young team. You went 19-6. Talk about your first year as being a head coach at West Caldwell.
I mean, a lot of challenges. Nerves, number one. You're following Coach Anderson, who's a legend, and you're really young. I had to move 4 freshmen up. Thankfully, they were really good, and we had some really good seniors who kind of took the reins. And Chris Mishaw, did a really good job for us. And there was a lot of challenges with that, a lot of nerves that you had to live up to those expectations. We went to the state championship in 2009, lost to Reggie Bullock in Kinston, won the league. I don't even know how many times in those 8 years. I think every year we were in the tops of the league. So a lot of challenges. You had to earn their trust. You had to earn the parents' trust. Thankfully, we lost our first 2 games. And thankfully, the kids stuck with me, and we went on a roll. I think we won like 17 straight. Ended up to losing to Shelby in the sectional finals. Gabe DeVoe went to Clemson, just an outstanding player. So it was a lot of fun. I learned so much on the fly. I was probably a terrible coach game 1. I don't even think I could write the names on the board as we were in the timeouts, but got comfortable and had some really good assistants with me, and we had an outstanding year.
Do you remember that first win as a head coach?
I do. It's crazy. My first win was versus High Brighton, which is our rival. We lost to them the first time, which in Lenore, was a death sentence for me. The world was ending. They held the ball for 3 quarters, and I believe we won 19-16. Don't quote me on that score. You have to go back and look. It was either 21-19 or 19-16. They held the ball for 3 quarters. We were tied at 16. We ended up winning in overtime, and that was our first win. And I think we won a bunch straight after that.
Well, Coach, it seemed like you were always trying to follow in some big footsteps. You were following in the footsteps of Coach Anderson, who had been there for, probably 20-plus years, like you said, had over 800 wins. So I'm sure it was probably over 30-plus years that we was at West Caldwell. Then the next season, you had a chance to go to Mountain Heritage in Burnsville. Now, Barry Johnson had been at the school for 33 years and had developed a reputation and was very successful there. Talk about that transition, and for the viewers, tell them where Burnsville is located.
Well, Burnsville we're about 35 miles east of Asheville, on the top of a mountain. Small rural community, blue-collar community. Love sports, tons and tons of support from the community. They're passionate, and that's probably not a big enough word to use on their love of high school athletics and their love of their community. So there's certainly some pressure to be successful here. And there's rich tradition, and Coach Johnson had tons of tradition in the boys program. Coach Shelton just won a state championship last season with the girls. So there's and our football team under Coach Robinson, who's the athletic director, has just been tremendous over the past decade. And so there's a ton of pressure and a ton of expectations here in the community. On Friday night, it's packed, which is a blessing. I love our gym. I love the passion of our fans, but it is a challenge. You always got to keep getting better. And I know that's coach talk and cliche, but that's something you got to continue to do and continue to prove yourself in this community. Following Coach Johnson, the year I was the head coach at West Caldwell, I was actually offered the job here at Mountain Heritage. My wife is from here. She was teaching in Lenore with me at West Caldwell. That's how we met. I turned the job down to take the West job, coach in between, and then I got the job the next year when it became available and moved up here. So I knew I had to follow a guy that had been here forever, even though there was one in between. And my first day here, he took me to his house and we visited, which was awesome. He told me about the community and gave me his support. I'm friends with his son. He still comes to our games, even though he coaches, I believe he's coaching middle school basketball in Tennessee post-retirement. So there's a lot of support from him. But, I knew that I had to follow 450 wins, 455 wins, but, I got to be me. So I learned so much from the coaches before me. So I'm just trying to be me and not worry about who came before me.
Well, the one thing when you're playing for a community school like Mountain Heritage, it can be a blessing and a curse. The blessing is you have the great fan support and the community support, but there's also the pressure, on Saturday mornings when, the team didn't do as well.
Absolutely. It probably took 5 years to earn their trust. Even though my wife's from here, I'm not, and I'm from north of the Mason-Dixon, and that presents a challenge of its own. Thankfully, administration has supported me. Especially Coach Robinson, and earning their trust. And I had to do a lot more different things than I did in Lenoir. I had to follow them to tournaments like yours when they played AAU. Had to be more present in the youth league, so people got to know me a little bit more. And actually had to have some conversations with some people, and that's still something that I'm going to have to continue to do. There is expectations on Saturday. If you don't win, they're talking about it at Little Smokies in the barbershop, at the lumber yard, and online. So you got to have thick skin. I learned that really quick, but I have a lot of people who are in our corner, and just very blessed in that regard.
Well, being a newcomer down here, you have to really learn how to speak very slow.
You do. I picked some of it up at WVU for sure. I had some friends from the Charlotte area, thankfully. A lot of them moved back down there, so I get to go visit them. So I picked up a little bit of the Southern drawl. My friends back home make fun of me when I call. I picked it up for sure. But I got to be me. I'm not a big golfer or anything like that. I'd rather go fishing, so I think that helps me a little bit here. But I just got to be me and focus on being me. And I think if you form those relationships with the community, they accept you in that regard.
Now, Coach, you've been at Mountain Heritage for 8 years, and you've enjoyed tremendous success. What's some of the biggest challenges you face year in, year out?
Graduation this year, going to be a big one, losing 6 seniors.
Good ones.
Yeah, losing some good ones. Again, that trust with the community, with the parents, those relationships, trying to get them to understand what we're trying to do. And I think we've created that culture, so it's becoming a little bit easier, but you can't take it for granted. And you got to get with them when they're young and build them. If you want to keep this thing going, you have to maintain that consistency of work and skill and strength. And, the kids that are coming up have, some pretty good role models that have graduated in the past 4 years that they can kind of follow. Our guys work as hard in the weight room, in the classroom, as they do on the basketball court. I think our team GPA was over 4.0.
Wow.
They're every morning in the past summers at 8 a.m., it's packed with football and basketball players, and we lift together. We lift together during the school and work out together. So we've kind of become this huge family. And I think that's really important to keep it going. We got to keep these kids playing and can't rest on our past accolades.
How important is it to develop a youth program at the middle school level and also at the JV level?
Really important, especially in an area like this where your pool is a little bit smaller of kids. We have a lot of parents in the community, past and present, who have committed, countless hours to take these kids and play at events like yours and different AAU events throughout the country, and really work these kids. The one thing here, at other places, kids go to the rec and they go to, maybe their skill coach. Here, if I open the gym up, they're in our gym. Which is a great problem to have. But you have to maintain that consistency of work. And our parents have really bought into that. They know to be successful, we have to do a little bit more than everybody else. And they certainly have. Anthony Randolph has taken this past group of seniors for the past, I don't know how many years, probably since they were in 3rd grade. I picked them up when they were in 5th grade. And followed them around and had them play against the top competition, not only in North Carolina, but in the region. They've gone all the way down to Houston together and played. So he really helped prepare them. I got to give him a lot of that credit. And, I was lucky to get them, and, they weren't afraid of anybody. And it certainly reaped benefits of that. And that has to continue for us to continue as a program.
Now, Coach, the last 3 years has been very successful for you as a coach and as a program. You finished in the Elite 8 2 of the 3 years, and the other year you finished in the Sweet 16. Talk about the difficulty once you get to the state playoffs and how hard it is to advance, because some of the games are so tight and so close, and it just depends on 1 or 2 plays.
It does. 2 years ago we lost on a buzzer beater to Shelby. in the sectional final. And, we feel like that we had an opportunity that year too. When you get to the Elite Eight, Final Four, Sweet 16, it's the who's who of coaches and players in the state. 2A basketball is really good and really competitive. And, we know we're going to face some more athletic teams than us. But our kids are more athletic than they look, for sure, and more athletic than a lot of people give them credit for. And I think that's why playing really good competition at an early age helps. So when we get to that point, we're not overwhelmed by seeing, more athletic teams or what people project as more athletic teams. But you're going to play, D1 athletes. You're going to play the top coaches in North Carolina in the Elite Eight and the Final Four and the state championship, and it's really difficult. I've got to coach in 2 state championships as an assistant. We lost to Reggie Bullock in Kinston in 2009 when I was at West Caldwell, and when I was at Morgantown High, we lost to Patrick Patterson, and who's still in the NBA playing. I don't know who for now. Last I thought he was with the Raptors. So it's tough to win it, and you have to have a little bit of luck, and the cards got to align the right way. And we're still chasing it, and we're going to keep working at it.
You mentioned one of the biggest challenges is graduation, and you had some really tremendous seniors on your squad. Tell the viewers some of the players that graduated and what they meant to you in the program.
Well, what they meant to me and my family is unbelievable. I don't know that I'm as accepted here without them and the way they carried themselves, the way they played, the way they represented our community in our high school. I don't think my longevity here would be the same without them. That's how important they are to me. They have, I don't have it in front of me, 6 or 7 school records, school record for wins this year. All of them are over 4.0 GPA, quality kids. Probably the top kid out of the group this year was Justice Shelton, 6'10", set the school record for field goal percentage around 75% on a career. Going to Mars Hill on a basketball scholarship. His mom is the girls coach. She played in the WNBA. She's won a state championship. He's got the pedigree and just a great kid, 4-year varsity starter for us. And just for us, he dominated the paint. Callan Randolph, who was our shooting guard / point guard, 6 foot 5'11" kid. School record in 3-point percentage, 3-pointers made, foul shooting percentage, foul shots made. Unbelievable young man. His dad is the one that took him on the AAU trips and so forth, and a big supporter of us and our booster club and our community. Then you have Lucas Jenkins. He started every game for me for 4 years, which has to be a record. His motor is unbelievable. At the end of the game, he looks like he's been through a battle, just totally exhausted, lay his body out there, played so hard, and such a great young man. Cole Sheehan, probably our biggest, strongest kid, going to go to Wingate to play football. 2-year starter for us, rebounder, athlete, can guard anybody. Nathaniel Ledford is going to go to High Point and walk on. He's a knockdown 3-point shooter and really could, spread people out. If they tried to guard, Callan or Justice, deny them, or we could find Nate and he'd knock it in. And then we had Levi Higgins, who's the indoor high jump state champion this year. Unfortunately, because of, our current situation, that he wasn't able to participate in outdoor track and fields championships. We think he would have won that too. Just a leaper. Some of his dunks ignited our crowd like no other, and just an unbelievable young man. So those guys are pretty darn special, hard to replace, but I'm very blessed and learned so much from them. And our kids learn so much from them. And I even think our community on loving each other, playing together, and being one. I think their legacy is going to be pretty long lasting in Mountain Heritage.
Well, Coach, 3 of them I knew really, really well. Of course, Justin Shelton going to Mars Hill, Lucas Jenkins, and also Callan Randolph. They came to a lot of our events, and they were just such outstanding young men on and off the court. And, we talked earlier, you talk about Lucas Jenkins, and he had one of the best motors that you would see anywhere in the state of North Carolina. The kid just played hard. And then, of course, you had Callum Randolph, who had some injuries. And, I think, he could have played at the collegiate level if he wouldn't have suffered those injuries early on in his career. And, of course, Justin Shelton is going to Mars Hill. But the most important thing, too, Coach, is you said you have as a team GPA of 4.0.
Oh yeah, I mean they're more competitive in the classroom than they are in the basketball court or in the weight room or in the football field or whatever. They know that without a great GPA, without that work ethic, basketball means nothing. That all the other stuff doesn't mean anything. And I've been in some places where I had to really worry when it came as grade time. What kids' GPA were, what their grades. With these guys, I would check just because it was habitual for me, but I already knew that I didn't even have to worry about it. I don't think one of them got in trouble one time in the last 3 years. And just leaders in the school and in the community. And, I didn't have to worry on Saturday night with these guys. I knew what they're doing. Most of them came and ate lunch with me every single day for 4 years. And we just had an unbelievable relationship, and I'm forever grateful for them.
Well, that will lead me into my next question is, what is your goal as a coach, and what kind of impact do you want to leave on your players?
I mean, I think with every coach, your goal is to win it all. I don't know that really defines who I am as a coach. I think that's your goal. I mean, I think as a coach, you want to be a mentor, you want to be a leader, you want to be some sort of father figure. You want to be a friend as well. You want them to trust you. And I think those relationships are parallel to winning. I think in today's day and age with today's kids, if you don't have those relationships, your opportunity to win is limited. You have kids transferring all over the world now. And I think at an early age, you got to get them on your team, and they got to trust you, and that has to continue. You can't just take it for granted. And I think as a coach, you want to be a guy that maybe showed them, besides hard work, because everybody talks about hard work and every coach expects hard work, that other things go into winning, like you better care about each other. You better love each other. You better love the school you're playing for. And when you do all those things, the hard work kind of takes care of itself. I don't think it works vice versa. If you don't love your school, you're not going to work hard. If you don't love your teammate, you're not going to work hard. That's when selfishness comes into play. And these guys had none of that, which was just, again, I'm so grateful for them.
That goes back to what you said earlier, the sense of pride that the community had in the school. And of course, the players growing up, they sense that sense of pride. And when they want to get there to the high school level, they want to be successful both in the classroom and on the basketball court.
Oh, they do. I mean, if you're not, when you're 30, the guy that was successful, if you're still living here, is going to tell you about it. I learned that here. They love to talk about the old teams, and it's fun. I've got to know a lot of the old guys, and it means something to win a championship here. And it's more than winning a championship. It's a sense of pride. Coach Robinson, who's our athletic director and football coach, and actually helps me on the basketball team, which is unheard of, talks about how our community loves to wear the paw to Asheville, our Cougar paw, and that sense of pride is really important, and we have a little edge about that, and our kids know that. And we've created a culture in our building, not just in basketball, but in athletics as a whole, where that paw means something, and you better represent it the right way.
Now, Coach, you spent 8 years as assistant coach, 8 years as a head coach. What's been the biggest highlight of your coaching profession so far?
Wow, that's a tough one. I think that the one that comes to mind the most is being the lead assistant when we went to the state championship in 2009 as an assistant. Beating Avery County, won the league here for 5 years. My first 5 years here, we finished second each year, and then knocking them off and winning it 3 years ago was a big time highlight. That group of seniors that year kind of set the tone for where our program went, and I kind of knew that we had turned the corner and changed the culture there. This year, I think my highlight probably was winning the conference tournament championship the way we did. We were expected to win it, and we expected to win it, but we totally went out there and played one heck of a game against a good Madison team. I could go on and on. Playing Patrick Patterson was pretty cool. In Morgantown, being behind the bench in a college basketball game and just seeing the way they prepare. We beat Connecticut State, who was really good one year. I wish we'd beat UConn, but Connecticut State, who was really good one year, and that was a big time highlight for us.
Well, Coach, being a basketball coach for a rural school, and it's true at every level, but you're more than coaching just basketball. You're coaching life skills along the way. In a lot of situations, you're the role model for the players. You become their friend. You become a father figure. Talk about that part of the coaching aspect of the game.
I have a daughter who's 9. I don't have a son, so they kind of become that to me. At least I would like to have that relationship with them. I care about them that way. They keep me young. I still play one-on-one, even though I'm 40s. They keep me young. They keep me up to date with social media and all this stuff that they need to do now to stay relevant, so people can get our information. And they also, they give me a sense of purpose in the building, in the community. They're good to my daughter. They tutor my daughter in school, and that relationship to me is almost better than any win or any accolade. I got guys for the rest of my life that I'm going to hold really close, and it's been that way since I started. I still keep in contact with some guys that I coached in West Virginia. So it's pretty neat, and social media allows that to happen, which is awesome. Kendall Jones, I follow on Twitter and talk to a little bit, and some of the guys I coached the year I was the head coach at West Caldwell. So it's a lot of fun. And that, to me, that is almost is more meaningful than any win that we have, is just that relationship with the kids.
Well, Coach, you followed 2 legends at the high school level. You followed Danny Anderson at West Caldwell for 1 year. And then when you came to Mountain Heritage, you followed Barry Johnson. He was a legend in that part of the woods as well. At the end of the day, you're going to be probably spending a lot of time, hopefully, at Mountain Heritage. Whoever follows in your footsteps will also be following a legend.
I guess so. I try not to look at it that way. I don't count my wins or that stuff. I just want to make an impact on these kids and make this community proud of what we do and who we are. And I think we've worked our way to doing that. It's got to continue. Our next teams have some big shoes to fill, and we want to continue it. Our goal is to win a league every year and advance as far as we can to the state championship, if that's what the cards line up to be. And if it turns out that we win a bunch of games and have a consistent program, that, of course, that's your goal as a coach, and I'd be really proud of that. But we just take it day by day. I'm not out here to promote Hank Newson to the world. I just want to make an impact on these kids in this community and form those relationships that I talked about. These kids are pretty awesome here, pretty blessed to live where we do, and it's a beautiful place. For all you guys out there who've never been up to this area, you need to come check it out. The mountains are beautiful, and the kids love hoops, so it's a lot of fun.
But Coach, it is your passion that you make an impact on the players, both on and off the court there, and I think that's what legends are made out of. And the thing that I really enjoyed today is how you basically told the story about Mountain Heritage as far as the culture there, the heritage, the community support. And that's what basketball is all about. And that's what life's all about. But we want to say thank you from Phenom Hoop Report for coming on today, on being on Coach's Corner. Thank you for your support. You've been to some of our events like our high school jamborees and also our team camps. Your players have supported our events. And we just want to wish you good luck this coming season.
I appreciate it. We're very grateful for your events. That's some of the stuff we're talking about. We get to go play kids that we normally wouldn't see regionally, and It's been really, really impactful to our program. We appreciate what you do promoting kids and the way you guys work tireless hours, promoting kids throughout the state and throughout the region. Want to wish health to everybody out there. We hope we get through this, and we hope we get to have some sort of normalcy coming through, and hope we get to have a basketball season. I'm an optimist and think we will. We're going to certainly work towards it. But until then, everybody stay healthy, and happy Memorial Day to everybody.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.